afternoon, welcome to the UK Column Live. It's the 13th of November 2012, it's just gone noon. Good afternoon, Brian.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Going to start with the weather as always. Brian, over to you.
Well, we're very interested because today in Plymouth it's actually been quite warm and the dog walkers have been complaining they've been overdressed, but contrary to our experience, the Express is predicting that cold winter weather is on its way.
Yep.
And they're talking about temperatures dropping to -15°C. The cold snap comes as the UK endures one of the most chilly Novembers on record. So the prediction is that we're going to have a very cold winter, and Mike Robinson in the studio with us this afternoon also believes that we're in for some sort of big freeze. So we're going to hold him to that as we look at what the weather has in store.
Thanks for that, Brian.
If it's not cold, of course, it could be quite mild and wet.
It could be.
We'll see.
It could be. We've got a video. I think, are we going to play the video first,
No.
or are we going to talk about it first?
Well, we were just going to call up. We had a report that the Bilderbergers are meeting today. Now, this is something that usually the mainstream press forget to report. The Bilderbergers are very powerful globalists, international bankers who meet to discuss the future of the world. It's just they don't bother to tell us about it. And of course, the key thing is that politicians are invited from all around the world, and politicians such as Tony Blair and Ed Balls, etc., have attended these meetings.
They're going to actually be meeting at the Hotel de Russi, which is between Via di Babuino and the Plaza del Popolo. That's today, and then they're going for a special tour of the museum, followed by dinner. So anyone in Rome who'd like to go and...
or anybody who could report, we'd love to know what the Bilderbergers are up to. Mike?
Well, that's a steering group meeting, so that's a special meeting. It's not the full Bilderberg group, so that'll be Ken Clark and Marcus Agius and a few others. So I just wonder whether that's being considered an emergency meeting, bearing in mind what's going on in this country at the moment.
Yeah, they're focusing apparently on Italy, Spain and Greece. That's apparently what this
That'll be where the riots are going to be then.
So the UK column interpretation is of course that the Bilderberg group, as one of the key globalist groups, will be planning what the next actions are to do both with globalisation, so the formation and expansion of the European Union, and of course the part that the international banking cartel is going to play. So if you don't know about the Bilderbergers, please have a look, because British and other politicians attend, and of course they usually do not report what was actually taking place. Rory Stewart MP up in Cumbria is one of the classic examples of a man who believes he can attend and then keep his actions quiet.
I think the only people who reported on it last was The Guardian. Is it Charlie Skelton?
Could have been, yeah. So keep an eye on the Bilderbergers. You need to, because they believe they can install a world government. But we move straight on to your favourite friend.
Well, actually, the person who's going to court is David Lawley-Wakelin. I've had him on the radio show in the past. We have a video of Mr. Wakelin, which I believe we're going to play now, and then he's actually up in court at the High Court.
Today, isn't it?
No, Friday the 16th at 9 o'clock. He's at the court in, where is he? Highgate. He's at Highgate Magistrates Court, and there's a campaign quote being put up at the moment called Wrong Man in the Dock, and people can have a look at Facebook, type in Wrong Man in the Dock. But here's the video.
So this is just a reminder of what he did at the Leveson inquiry.
Excuse me, this man should be arrested for war crimes. JP Morgan paid him off for the Iraq war 3 months after we invaded Iraq. He held up the Iraq Bank for $20 billion. He was then paid $6 million every year, and still is, from JP Morgan 6 months after he left office. The man is a war criminal.
I'm sorry for that, Mr. Blair, and I'd like to find out how this gentleman managed to access the court through what is supposed to be a secure corridor. And I'll have an investigation undertaken about that immediately. I apologise.
That's fine. Can I just say, actually, on the record, what he said about Iraq and JP Morgan is completely and totally untrue. I've never had a discussion with them about that.
Well, there we have it. There is Mr. Blair doing what he does best, which is denying he had discussions with JP Morgan. But of course, that little bit of video gives us a snapshot onto what has been going on in the Leveson inquiry, and we'll come back on Mr. Leveson a little bit later in the programme.
It's the fact that Leveson apologises to him, and that really rattles me. But anyway, David Lawley-Wakeling is in court on Friday at Highgate Magistrates Court, and I know would probably appreciate the support. There are anti-war, Stop the War Coalition campaign group are also going to be there. And as I say, on Facebook, there is a Wrong Man in the Dock Facebook page, so he'd appreciate your support. So
we just say that war criminals of other nationalities invariably get picked up and brought to justice. However, Mr. Tony Blair still remains at large. Meanwhile, people who point out the errors of his ways are the people who are brought into court. Could it be that justice in Britain is turned upside down at the moment? Seems like it, doesn't it? Yeah. Well, here is another man who's been betrayed. This is Sergeant Danny Nightingale from the SAS, and we'd like to highlight very strongly today that this man is currently imprisoned for bringing home a weapon from one of his tours overseas, but he's had some problems due to injuries from stress and heat in the jungle. Which has meant that he's lost some function of his memory. And this ties in with the fact that the weapon which he brought back and was in a secure stowage within the SAS compounds was eventually brought to light. So a man who's been trained to use firearms and has been put in very dangerous overseas situations is now put in prison for having a firearm. Meanwhile, Tony Blair remains at large. And of course, the key point about this story is that our government is desperately frightened of firearms in the hands of ordinary members of the general public, and particularly ex-service people who might know how to use those weapons, as the government is getting frightened at the moment that policies are driving the public towards thoughts of other alternative action, which of course we could not condone, but nevertheless the point is made that the government is so frightened of this situation and this gentleman that they need to put him in prison. Yeah. So we'll come back and report more on that in the coming days, but it seems to us that there should be some form of campaign to get this man released. David Cameron, I'll just follow through on this one. David Cameron makes no apology for his controversial visit to the Gulf to promote British defence firms. So the hypocrisy is here straight away that David Cameron is busy selling the weapons to start and foment the wars. But of course, while that is going on, he completely undermines British Defence Forces by withdrawing equipment and budgets, thereby making the men in the field more vulnerable. But of course, David Cameron is highly unlikely to ever put himself in a place of danger. I think at the moment he prefers the buffets and fine banqueting dinners in London.
And pubs.
And I think you've got another slide on this, Mike.
Yeah, I thought this headline was quite interesting, and in the body of the text, the Telegraph is saying here, Mr. Cameron strongly defended the city and the defence industry in a speech, promising a new commercial focus, and that's in quotes, a new commercial focus to the government's diplomatic dealings with its foreign counterparts. And what this headline is saying is that David Cameron promises to sell the city and defence firms. Well, I think he's literally going to sell defence firms. As we know, BAE was to merge with EADS, and that didn't happen. But I think the intention is to divest Britain of any capability for not only fighting its own defence, but producing the materiel in order to do so. So I think that's kind of a bit of a double entendre there on that headline.
Yeah, I certainly think that this is the case. The aim is to absolutely destroy British defence capability as a nation state. That's the key thing. And we know from the very dark and devious discussions that were going on just before David Cameron came into power, meetings held at the home of the the British ambassador in Paris, to discuss the link-up between British and French armed forces. None of this, of course, was reported in the mainstream press. That resulted in the 50-year defence pact. And now what we are clearly seeing is that the British armed forces are slowly but surely being squeezed into this joint operation with the French. And ultimately, of course, once the command and control structures are merged, it will be very, very difficult to separate those again. So I think David Cameron is absolutely about to sell the nation and our defence capability. If I just move on to the next slide, which illustrates this, British Forces News is reporting here that a Royal Navy Lynx helicopter has made a first by landing on a French frigate. This is really indicative of the speed at which the joint British and French exercises are being pushed home. We've currently got joint army exercises. We've also had paratroop forces working together. The excuse used for this particular event was the anti-piracy patrols being carried out by the EU. But of course, this is just one further nail in the coffin of an independent British defence capability. Inflation, I think, has interested you, Mike.
Isn't it amazing? The headline is shock jump in inflation to 2.7%. And every time one of these headlines comes out telling us that we should be shocked or surprised or amazed, and that the government or the Office for National Statistics or this economist or the Governor of the Bank of England was surprised or shocked by this or that. They're not surprised or shocked. This was absolutely on the cards. What's interesting is what the things that they're blaming for it. So they're blaming higher university tuition fees. They're blaming some food costs, but they're really not getting to grips with the underlying inflation problem that we have. In some supermarkets, for example, you walk around and you look at the prices on the shelves, and it gives you the price for the item, but it also gives a per 100 millilitres or per 100 grams price for the item. And as I've mentioned before, products are being packaged in smaller quantities in the same size pack to give the impression that prices are not rising. In fact, prices are rising significantly higher than 2.7% for the most basic necessities. And so this UK inflation figure of 2.7% shouldn't be a surprise for anybody. It's still massively understating the reality of what people face on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. What fascinates me is that we can apparently measure inflation to 0.1%. Meanwhile, we're printing billions of pounds worth of money, and we're not quite sure what the effect of that money is going to be. So I think there's a mismatch here straight away in the truth.
What QE are we into at the moment? Are we QE 3 or 4?
No, still. Well, the UK is still. It's in the States it's QE 3, but in the UK we're still on the same QE we've been on for quite some time now.
Okay.
So
that's
no
quantitative easing for anybody who's watching today and hasn't heard that term before. The printing of money under QE, quantitative easing. It's all hot air and gas.
Yeah, I mean this is really the same mentality, isn't it? It should be no surprise to people that the amazing headline here is proof of price rigging would devastate public trust. Well, does the public really have any trust in our utilities companies? I certainly don't have any trust in the utilities companies. It's a cartel. Of course, prices are fixed. This again should be a surprise to nobody. It's same with mortgages, same with the banking sector as a whole. These are cartels that are running, and they aren't really in competition with each other, which is why when the price rises or falls from one member of the cartel, the same is reflected in all the rest. But just as with the banking sector, it should be no surprise to anybody that there's price fixing going on in the wholesale energy markets. And the same goes for food as well. It's the same right across the board with commodities.
And we have to say that the scale that this is going on, the government must know what is happening. It can't be the case that the government doesn't understand what's happening in the private energy sector. The government must be complicit in what's actually happening, the price rigging.
Well, what is the penalty going to be? The penalty could be some fines for the organisations involved. There'll be nobody going to prison for rigging these prices.
No, because
I bet the bosses are getting some great bonuses as well.
Well, of course. I think we can perhaps highlight this as interesting. It could lead to fines. This is exactly the language that's been used with the fraudulent rigging within the banks that we just rather lamely talk about fines. Meanwhile, we have a serviceman who's been out there in the front line for his country, Sergeant Nightingale, and what happens to him? He gets put in prison. So I think it's becoming clearer and clearer at the moment that the government is complicit in the fraud and corruption that we now see moving through the banking industry and here into the energy market.
Somebody in the chat room's just pointed out that shopping in Ireland is actually now cheaper than Northern Ireland, and that's the first time since the euro came in.
Right, well, that's an interesting comment. Still quite expensive when we were there, I think.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing is somebody's been reporting a gas trader who's been...
a whistleblower.
Well, actually, that's the same story we've just covered. So,
right.
So,
but this is the man who's actually blown the story.
That's the guy who's blowing the whistle, and maybe we should try and have a chat to him at some point.
I think that'd be a very good idea.
Yeah, very.
But the Mail's challenging our intelligence.
Are we getting more stupid? I think when we look at the standard of education in the UK and the United States in particular, we might say that we are getting more stupid. I think that my generation's a bit more stupid than my parents' generation, and I think that's coming down through the generations as a result of policy, as usual. But I don't believe for one second that our intelligence, our capability is reducing. We're not devolving as a species. We're being dumbed down, and that's the difference. So this is trying to put a scientific basis for what is an effect caused by government policy right around the world, and I think it's a totally disingenuous piece of research.
Could it also have something to do with the fluoridization in the water supply? What's going into our foods?
Well, possibly, but we don't have fluoride in our water in this country yet.
Well, we do in some parts. In some parts we do. Yeah.
Well, we certainly know that there is basically an attack on people at the moment, and this Mail online article does rather seem to be throwing it into our face. We would argue at the moment from the UK Column studio that it's vital that people really start to put their brains to good use and to wake up. Maybe we can take a look at this with the next little subject, which is really what is happening in the country and how it's being done. So the Independent here talking about massive possible job losses with the NHS. 60,000 NH jobs face the axe, and of course this is a direct result of the fact that both the Labour and Tory Liberal governments are privatising the NHS. So we're told this is all about saving money, but in fact what it is doing is putting control of the NHS into private companies, and they don't need the employees. So we're going to see these big job losses and huge pressure coming on families employed by the NHS. Of course, if we actually have a little look behind the scenes, this is the reality. So George Osborne is not talking about the dangers of these massive job losses. He's not talking about the fact that we have people on a barely livable wage or losing benefits. George Osborne is confident that the most important thing for Tory policy at the moment is gay marriage. Now, this appears to me to be extraordinary, but in fact, if you follow it through, it seems that at the moment, anything which is moving towards attacking normal heterosexual families is a target for the government. So George Osborne, if we have a look at him and where he's come from, this was a picture that did appear in the mainstream press of a young George Osborne and a lady friend enjoying a good night out. Is this man, well, is he thinking on the same planet as we are? I think that what is actually happening is he is simply following through a policy, and that policy is to destroy jobs and it's to destroy the public structure within the country.
Can I jump in? We also had David Cameron last week when he was on This Morning, and Philip Schofield had handed him the list, where he didn't address the fact that about the paedophiles in government. He brought it right back down to homosexuality and gays, when that wasn't the issue at all. So they seem pretty obsessed at the moment, the Tories, with homosexuality and what have you. Well,
what is very interesting is we've now got to the situation, as we're going to see. We can move on to the next slide here, where all of a sudden the abuse of children has simply disappeared out of the headlines. We're not talking about the fact that Jimmy Savile and his cohorts were able to get in amongst the BBC into hospitals, into secure prisons in order to ply their trade. We're not talking about that anymore. All of a sudden the mainstream media has been completely blown apart. Totally. And what are we talking about? We're talking about senior BBC staff being paid off with over £400,000.
£450,000 payoff given to Entwistle, and he resigned on Saturday. He's been awarded a full year pay, even though he's only worked 54 days. He should have only been entitled to half of that figure, but Lord Patten, who's the BBC Trust chairman, defended the amount of money and said it was justified and necessary to allow a clean break and avoid lengthy delays.
Yeah. So the focus is absolutely not on the abuse of children and what was going on in the BBC. Well, we don't want any lengthy delays because that might actually raise some dirt here. And the irony, sorry to bang on about this one, but we've got Lord Patten, of course, holding this gentleman's hand. But if we look at what the mainstream press are coming up with at the moment, they're reporting that the BBC's got a blind hatred of Thatcher and her Tories, and that's why there's been this terrible smear on Lord McAlpine. So what we are seeing is a complete smokescreen, which is to remove the subject of paedophilia and child abuse from the mainstream media. We've suddenly lost track of the fact that it's been put forward publicly that we've got paedophile rings operating in Westminster and amongst key people. Now it's down to the politics of what's actually been happening in the...
Two more senior bosses have actually stepped down, only temporarily from their posts. The Director of News, Helen Bowden, and her Deputy, Stephen Mitchell, have both stood aside in light of the supposed error linking Lord McAlpine. Right.
Well, the other bit that ties in with this, of course, is that we're now seeing that not only have we got an attack on the mainstream press with Leveson and the Hacked Off inquiry, we've got this attack on the BBC over the fact they've been involved in sloppy journalism over Lord McAlpine, and now here we come, as expected, with people talking and calling out for ways of reining in Twitter and Facebook. So the sub-headline there, Lord Justice Leveson must find a way to stop people using Facebook, Twitter and other websites to spread heinous slurs on people when he delivers his report into media standards. So the establishment is clearly not bothered at all about the abuse of children. The reports from hundreds, thousands of families talking about the scandal of the closed family courts, the fact that we've got children being taken out of so-called care homes and trafficked. We're not interested in that. What we are interested in is shutting the system down if somebody dares to actually speak out about what is happening. And of course, the information that's circulating on the alternative media at the moment has been of a particular high quality, with people quoting mainstream press articles of years ago when it was clearly being stated who was being involved with the paedophile activity. So we see a smoke screen. This is Sally, isn't it? I think the
Sally
speaker,
Bercow.
Sally Bercow. She's being threatened or with possible lawsuits because she dared to Twitter that the trend on Lord McAlpine was increasing. So this is a very interesting situation where you don't even have to talk about somebody or accuse them. You can talk around the subject, and now the state is going to come for you. 42 Tory MPs have actually pushed at the moment for state control of the press. I'm led to believe that includes Gary Streeter, who's one of the local Tory MPs in the Plymouth area. We'll confirm that after the show, but I believe that's correct. So at the moment, we've now got the next stage moving on. So Leveson is going to come to the fore to say we need state control of the press. We're stirring up a little bit of debate in order to make it appear realistic. So here he is, the man himself.
Can I just say that you made a great observation on what he looks like dressed up in his little outfit there.
It's a fairy prince outfit, a princess outfit. I can't describe it in another way. If we stay on the theme, of course, he is the Wicked Witch. But basically, this is the man selected by David Cameron, who has now become an international arms dealer. He's the man who's not telling the truth to the country about what's happening with social policy and economics. He appoints this gentleman, Lord Leveson. Lord Leveson is running an inquiry with Sir David Bell, a man who's got fingers in all the pies. So our view in the studio is that we are rapidly moving towards state control of the media, unless the mainstream media and press improve their intelligence. So perhaps the Daily Mail should take a note of that, and start to look at what's actually happening.
And of course, it's the same man who apologised to Blair as well.
It is indeed,
yeah. Story.
Yeah. So the good news on the horizon is what's happening with alternative media, and we'd encourage viewers and listeners to have a look on the internet at who else is reporting information. Patrick Henningsen, of course, who reports with us here at UK Column Live, has been pushing out some extremely interesting stories around the McAlpine and the whole business of the abuse of children, and he's been picking up on the fact that Max Clifford has been appearing under the spotlight, having said that he knows all the dark secrets.
Well, it was actually, I've seen the video, it was actually, he wasn't, I believe he wasn't aware of this video, but if anyone would like to maybe have a look online, they will be able to see Max Clifford revealing all and supporting alleged child abusers.
Well, this is quite incredible. You can see the film clip yourself, so this is not innuendo on alternative media. The man is speaking himself. But the point that's been raised on the internet at the moment is that this man is talking about the dark secrets of other people, which he appears to be rather close to. At the same time, the BBC has got him as a PR ambassador for children in need. And of course, this perhaps takes us round in a loop, because the BBC clearly didn't know what was going on with Jimmy Savile. So is there more happening at the moment? We're running just over time, but we'll keep going on the important subject of child abuse. And of course, a man who has now absolutely taken the full vitriol of the press and media at the moment is Stephen Mesham, the victim from the care home in Wales. And here is a report from the Mail Online where it's got a victim of his delusions, astonishing story the BBC didn't tell you about its troubled star witness. The internet and alternative media are picking up on these two gentlemen who produced the story, David Rose and Bob Whiffenden. And what is being pointed out is that they have basically distorted the truth by making it appear that this victim of abuse was then involved in fraudulent activity. But the truth of the matter is, as the BBC originally reported in 2005, that this man was actually cleared of accusations of fraud in relation to benefits and also his relationship with one of the charities. So it appears that there's been a deliberate attempt to bully and smear this witness. It's taken its toll, because Mr. Mesham said it's been 4 years, 1 month and 12 days since I was arrested for this. This is the original accusations about fraud. Since then, my life has been unbearable. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't go out, I lost my house. Today is about justice, not compensation. But my life has been on hold for 4 years, and so has my family. So here we have a man who has been badly abused as a child. He's then accused falsely with respect to benefits. And we now move forward when we know, without a shadow of a doubt, the paedophile rings are operating at very high level in this country. And what's happening is this man is being attacked again.
There were reports yesterday that he was missing, but apparently he's okay.
Well, we've heard that he is fine, and that is being reported on the press. The Independent here is just saying that he is going to cooperate with police investigations into North Wales children's homes. But I've got to say, this is an exceptional man after all he's endured, both as a child and an adult, that he's actually going to stay cooperating with police and the public sector, who surely he must have absolutely no confidence in. So we would like to say well done to the BBC for helping to shift the target from the true abusers of the children onto one of the victims. And of course, you can be paid £400,000 for doing it.
£450,000 payoff, yeah, for 54 days' work.
Right. We finish off on a couple of items. Secret court powers. Of course, Ken Clarke has been one of the individuals who's been pushing for more and more secret courts. And at the moment, it appears that at least some MPs are trying to stand up against this.
I don't know if anybody saw yesterday that they're now trying to get some civil cases into the secret courts as well.
Right. Well, so, I hadn't seen that, so right. Perhaps we should
bring it up on maybe bring it up on Thursday.
We should focus on that.
Yeah.
Okay. And we'll just touch on Syria, so people in Britain today don't forget what's happening in Syria, and that David Cameron and the Tory government are pressing hard to get more weapons into that very troubled area. The Guardian here reporting that Israel has now started shelling into Syria in retaliation for alleged Syrian strikes.
Twice it's been, I believe.
Into Israel.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll finish on a positive note. Do you know about this one?
Yeah, I know a lot about this. Steve Hotwood is holding a Totnes Cancer Care Conference this Saturday and Sunday at Totnes Civic Hall between 9 and 6 p.m. Lots and lots of speakers. If you want to have a look at the website, it's totnescancercare.org. It's up on your screen now. And it's as it says on the flyer, treating people, not cancer. It's all about health.
Well, this is we should explain this basically, that the law does not allow you to say that you can treat cancer. You can end up in prison for claiming that. But the conference is about treating the whole person.
The person, exactly.
And I'm sure it's going to be extremely interesting.
Yeah, some huge speakers as well. So 2-day event, and that's Saturday and Sunday.
Okay. And Thursday, just a little announcement.
Thursday, yeah, we're going to have a special show. We're not going to have a guest in, and we're going to be looking at what is really happening in this country.
Yeah.
Break it all down.
What's happening in Britain? Why is it happening? What is being done to us? So I hope you'll join us on Thursday at 2 o'clock for the 2-hour show.
And tomorrow at 12. And if you like what we're doing, please subscribe, ukcolumn.org. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.